Church intro video. Church intro video.
Intro video.
Church intro video.
Oh, wow.
Church intro video. Church intro video.
So did you read any good news this week?
About?
Anything. I'll accept any good news. Any good news you got, I'll accept it.
My vacation starts in 5 days. That's good news. I keep reading that on the calendar.
I noticed gas here had dropped to $3.79 for regular yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, from $4.09 earlier in the week to $3.79.
It's still decently high here.
I mean, $3.79 is still high for regular, but at least it's not 30 more cents than that. Right?
Yeah.
Because that would be worse.
Yeah.
That would be worse. Church intro video.
It's the church.
Nobody on yet.
Video. Nope.
It's just me.
Yep. 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 Yep.
That's okay. I'll put out the welcome message anyway. Anybody who comes along.
Yep. Yep.
Facebook is taking such a long time to accept messages right now on the thing.
Facebook crashed on me twice earlier today.
Really?
I was doing my once a day, like where I look at it, and then in the morning when I read my webcomics and look at Facebook, and it just didn't wanna. Actually did the whole like, where Google Chrome goes, oh snap, when like the page is unresponsive and fails. I was like, oh, like you straight up confused Chrome crashed. Like that's not even like a small crash. You just something.
Even Chrome was like, even we don't know what happened.
Hello, Phoenix.
Phoenix! She says, pew pew.
Phoenix has become very active on Twitch.
Yeah?
Yeah, she's been watching a whole bunch of cross stitch and Lego Twitch.
Zadie's here, Biggs is here.
Hello,
Party.
Zadie. Hello, Biggs. Hey, look, Biggs, we started on time and didn't have to get a message from you. What do you think about that, huh?
We didn't have to what?
So often I get a message from Biggs while I'm trying to get it turned on, and it's like, "Are we going live?" Working on it.
Well, that's the plan.
What's the plan for next week?
To record it ahead of time.
Okay. Can we release?
I'm thinking we'll record on Saturday night, and then
Can we release on Twitch at a?
we can release on Restream.
And it'll push it to Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we can just be hanging out to chat.
Mm-hmm. Hang out and available in the chat, so that if anyone has questions or comments or concerns, we're there.
Because I remember last year we had issues at that hotel with having enough bandwidth to go live, plenty of bandwidth to do other things. I played video games fine there, but just wasn't quite enough to sustain being live 30 seconds.
Yeah, like every 31 seconds it would crap out. You can only be live for 30 seconds. It's crazy. That's not what you meant.
What did I mean? 14 seconds.
That we had 30 seconds left on the timer before we were face live.
10 seconds, that is not what I mean when I'm randomly saying seconds at the beginning of the time. 3 seconds. Hello and welcome to episode 49, season 347.
Season 3, episode 71 of the Berean Manifesto. Faith, hope, and love for the modern Christian.
You should redo that because the hello and welcome was gone for some reason. You either did it too loud so your mic turned you off or something. It just ignored you completely.
I didn't do it at all because you did it.
Oh. Well, then that's just confusing because now I've just ruined the intro.
You want me to do the intro again?
I don't care what you do. You're the one who has to deal with the recording.
You're the one that ruined it.
Look, live is live. Y'all see all the bloopers. All the bloopers. All the Jonathan playing a game on his phone. All of it. There's no... Yes! Doesn't he look so weird, Biggs? Oh. He caught me off guard.
For those of you out in podcast land, I trimmed up my beard to
That's not
extremeness.
That's not trimming up your beard. You shaved your face.
Look, it's there. See, look, it's there.
That's just what's been growing since you shaved off all of your face. It's about how my head looks. Actually, that's more hair that's on my head right now. Cause I did not just do what I normally do. I actually got like the pit bull four-headed razor, and cause we were going somewhere new today, and so I was like, I gotta look decent, cause I can't embarrass the person who invited me, cause that's rude. You know, that's just.
Yes, because it would be embarrassing if you had hair on top of your head.
It is if it's messy and don't look right.
Okay, how was your week?
Busy.
Afternoon.
My week was very, very, very busy. I spent a whole bunch of time working on the reports at work, and getting ready for meetings that are going to happen while I am out of town on vacation. And next week is going to be even busier in preparation for vacation, which this is the reason I don't even like taking vacation, to be honest. Like, I hate vacations because I have to make sure to work harder before and then harder after the vacation. And so it gets to a point where it's like, why? Well, why? Just why? Like, I get it, mental health and sanctity of stuff and human beings need rest and all that other crap that drives me nuts. But, God, I hate it. I hate it so much. I just, ugh. And Biggs, you already know the answer to the question, so I don't know why you just didn't answer your wife.
Yeah.
When she asked. This week was St. Patty's Day.
St. Patrick's Day.
And for St. Patrick's Day, every year in the past, I used to throw a party. And at said party, we would watch
a good old Irish soiree.
We would watch Boondock Saints, 1 and 2. But you knew. You didn't have to act like you're being silly, sir. And so this year we decided would be the first year that we would include the children in watching it.
Which wasn't the best idea.
It
wasn't horrible.
It wasn't horrible.
So much,
it wasn't horrible.
But it wasn't the best idea.
There's one scene.
There was some crying.
There's one scene in the first movie that is real intense. And every year, I've seen this movie to the point where I can literally quote it. And people that know me, that's near impossible because I don't remember anything. But I can literally quote these movies. And so I've seen it a bunch. And I'm sitting there, do. The thing happens that happens, and I jump every time. Every time I jump. And I jumped, Tina jumped, and Zoe just started. Rain lost her mind and started crying. And it's a valid cry. Um, I cry at different parts of the movie, but that's fine. Um, and so you know, the we threw a full thing. We did sugar-free Jello that was green. We did green Sprite. We did root beer in the glass bottles that come with cane sugar because we have found that cane sugar is a type of sugar that Sarah can have in moderation because it's more natural as opposed to the sugars that make her sick. So she can have it in moderation. So she was able to enjoy one of those. Um, we dyed chocolate chip cookies green. I made a green yellow cake. Biggs must have ate all of the cookies that we brought to him. Um, and so it was just a good time. It was just a good time. And it was the first time the girls had seen the movie. And of course, I'm a fan because for any of you out there in video land, um, there's a giant poster behind me of the first movie. So, which I actually got asked about for work because there's one specific doctor that I work with who was like, "Hey, we should be, since it's just the two of us, let's jump on camera." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And I jump on camera and he's like, "Okay, before we get started, Mr. Amy just got on the settee. um, before we get started, I gotta ask you what's all your accessories behind you." And I'm like, "Oh crud!" Now he sees just
That's a
this
lot.
this part of the room, so it's not not as much as on camera.
Mm.
But it was humorous. I was like,
Like,
"Ugh."
these are the Boondock Saints,
Yeah.
and this is Cholomander.
Cholomander was not out at the moment.
Oh. Okay.
Cholomander is of course new from a couple of weeks ago when Zadie decided to put a hat on Charmander, and I'm sorry, Homeboy looks like a cholo with the hat all the way
Oh
down,
boy, yeah.
just because the way his cheeks are, the expression, the way it works, and so
But he's like the Cholo from Ant-Man, when he's like you know what I mean, you know what I mean. It's great, and it's happy, and he's that guy.
he's the friendly, yeah,
Yeah,
he's a friendly, but
super friendly.
um, I didn't realize how much of the settee y'all can see on screen, um, because Amy just jumped up there and is like, "Hey, what's up, guys?" Oh,
Well,
you
for one, your screen is tiny because you're the little square.
I am. I am.
And
I
even
am.
on my bigger version here, I can barely see
Yeah,
a
he's like
little piece of Amy.
he's like this big. But,
Yeah.
it's just funny cuz I'm like, what's he doing over there? But but yeah, it's actually time to change my behind me again cuz it's boring me what's behind me. I'll do it when I get home from my spring break. But anyway, that's how my week went. It was busy.
Cool.
How was your week?
So my week, it was the Gerg's spring break this
Mhm.
week, so he didn't have school, and so I wasn't having to get up every morning at the butt crack of day to take him to school, which was awesome. Um, and I picked up a new contract this week. We're gonna call it short term. It'll probably end up being about 6 months. Uh, Not full time 6 months, but like
On and
full
off.
time for a week or two, maybe a full time for a month, and then
Right.
it'll taper off at some point, and just be here or there. But a contract's a contract, man. Money's money. It's
Yep.
good to be making money again. So there's that. So that's good. And then one day this week I woke up and I got a text from my aunt. Okay, so my grandmother and aunt live across the street, and then my uncle next door to them. And the three houses, we all share one water well. And I live in the oldest of the three homes, and it's a mobile home, and it's got all the original plumbing. So from time to time, we have busted pipes, and I have to go out and turn off our water because then they don't have water. And she texted and said, "Do you have water?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm not awake enough for this." So when I looked, and indeed there was no busted pipes, I went to investigate what was going on. Couldn't figure it out. Turned out it was something to do with the electricity. The electricity company came out and started working on one of the poles in their yard. And when they were done, the water was back on and everything was fine again. And it was, oh, okay, cool. So that was an interesting moment there when that happened. But yeah, that was basically my week in a nutshell. I got what's called a power pass in one of the games we're playing in Lost Ark,
Mm-hmm.
which allowed me to level a new character up to level 50
Mm-hmm.
and gave me some armor to start honing to make it more powerful, which is cool. It's a cool thing. So I've been enjoying that process, and I like the play style. I think of this character more than the others, so that'll be good.
Mm.
You're making a face. I don't care. I
I
like
know.
it.
You like
So
it, and that's fine.
I like
I
it.
just hate it.
I like it. I'm gonna be a gun lancer
I hate it.
instead of a gunslinger. Instead of a dead-eye gunslinger, I'm gonna be a gun lancer.
I didn't like it.
All right. So that was our weeks. So now it's time for getting to know the pastors,
Mm-hmm.
which Pastor Nooms has commandeered the last 2 weeks in a row. And I was asking him, "Do you have a question today?" And he was like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
I don't.
So, am I pulling a card and we're going back to cards, or do you have something you're gonna?
So here's the thing. If I did have something, I would wait till you pulled the card. Just for the sheer funniness of waiting till you pull the card. Um, but I don't have a question this week. So
What will people look back at us 50 years from now and be shocked and appalled by?
I think it's the
One
argument.
word: Kardashians.
No, that won't be the worst. There's worse things.
Jersey Shore.
No, there's much worse things than that. See previous statement. I think they'll look back and just not understand. Um, just us.
What do you mean?
Like we look back at 50 years ago and we're appalled by things that people that did, right?
Like
Like
what?
maybe not 50. Yeah, 50. World War II, right? We look back and we're appalled by what. Why did
That's
everyone?
significantly more than 50 years,
Yeah,
but okay.
yeah. Whatever. You know, we I have no time concept. You know that.
So if we look back at 1972,
Why?
that's 50 years ago.
Ew. That's so creepy. No, we're not that old. That's not how time works. Um, so we look back 80 years. You know, we're appalled by what Hitler did. You know,
But the question is 50 years. When we look back at 1972,
does that say 50 years? I didn't hear that part of the
that
question.
starts at 50 years. In 50
1972.
years, they'll look back at us and be appalled by what?
Well, where are we going to be
So
in
when
50
I look
years?
back at 72, I'm appalled by the bell
Clothing.
bottom.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
clothing was terrible. That came back around and then left.
The hairstyles.
Mullets are back right now, which is just terrible.
Oh gosh.
Tina, somebody that I'm related to went to a school the other day and came home and was like, mullets are back. And I'm like, no, we're in the deep south and mullets aren't even back here. Like, there's no way mullets are okay again. And she's like, no.
No,
I
no,
saw a
they're
kid
back.
with a mullet. And I was like,
Yep.
no, Zadie, there's no way kids are running around with mullets. And then we got into an argument. Um, and this I will say was an argument on whether or not the Mexican gentleman in Boondock Saints 2 has a mullet. Which I was trying to explain he does not. He has a modified rat tail, um, which is a standard haircut, not a mullet because it's too long to be a mullet. A mullet has to be shorter. Um, That's a whole nother haircut. But um, y'all out here arguing with your wives about important stuff. We out here arguing on whether or not characters have mullets. We ain't the same. Let's just be clear. Um, do you have any?
We ain't,
What's
we ain't the same.
We ain't the same.
Now, if you use napkins from restaurants in your car as Kleenex to blow your nose, then yes, we're in the same tax bracket. But other than that, we got some differences.
Homie, we are not in the same tax bracket. We're several brackets away from each other, and I still do that. So, that's not
supposed to tell people how poor I am.
There's a carpet behind you.
That's not a carpet, it's a rug.
I said nothing about how poor
the church
you are.
bought this.
Yeah, that makes it better. I said nothing.
You and I were several tax brackets separated, and I'm obviously not a millionaire. So I'm down. So I'd have to be below you, not above you.
Actually, I guess we're not several. We're only. I actually don't know how many tax brackets we are. Several is probably incorrect.
And I'm in the negative tax bracket.
No, you're still in a tax bracket. You just don't pay taxes. There's a difference. You are in a tax bracket.
I pay negative taxes. When it lists your tax rate on your tax return, my number's always negative. What are you looking up?
U.S. tax brackets.
Mine's like poverty minus 200% or something like that.
No, we're not several. There's one tax bracket between us. Just one. So, no, we're good. I was wrong. That was rude of me.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Now I gotta look up the tax brackets.
Well, I guess this chart over here says different. This chart over here says there's two brackets between us. So I don't know. Now I don't know either. Yeah, now I don't know.
Tax brackets.
Okay, there's two tax brackets between us. According to the 20... I was looking at old data. If I'm looking at 2021 taxes, there are two brackets between us.
Yes, there are two brackets between us.
Well, no. Because technically, you because of your income, you were in you weren't in the lowest bracket. But then you...
After business expenses, I was.
Okay, then never mind. Alright. Yeah, Biggs. We are so far down a rabbit hole that doesn't matter at all. But that's the kind of night...
give us a shotgun so we can get rid of these rabbits. So yeah, that is the kind of night we're going to be on, because the episode, the title of tonight's episode is Casting Lots and Hanging Thoughts. So,
and to be clear, that's thoughts, not thoughts. Just so we're all clear.
Thoughts, not thoughts. Yeah. So tonight we're talking about casting lots and we're talking about hanging thoughts. And the casting lots part, that's more going to be Pastor Nooms' thing, because his brain's been on this lately, and then I kind of fell onto it in my study this week and went, oh, okay, well, here it is. This is the time to talk about it. So
it has been. I do obsess about things sometimes, and it has recently been lots.
Yeah. And so, do you want to go first, or you want me to go first? I'm going to talk about hanging thoughts.
Go first,
you're going to talk about
yours
is
lots, more important, because we talked about casting lots just a couple weeks ago.
Did we? On the podcast?
Just like a sentence.
Oh, okay. All right, so...
the argument we had was after.
Okay. So we're still in Acts, and the section of Acts that we're pulling out of this week, and Biggs brings up on Twitch that they cast lots a lot in the Bible. And yes, they do. And if we cast lots today as much as they did in the Bible and in the ways they did in the Bible, we would probably be accused of witchcraft by the modern church. But it's a legitimate way to hear from God on, what to do, and people just don't utilize it anymore because it's magic. All right, so we're
There is an amazing. No, we're doing yours first. We talked about this, so stop.
What do you mean?
Your
dad
I'm
it
aware.
up.
I'm aware. And I almost went into it, and then went.
You almost went right into it. All right, so we're pulling from Acts chapter 1, verses 15 through 26. And that says, "In those days, Peter stood up among the brothers and sisters. The number of people who were together was about 120, and said, 'Brothers and sisters, it was necessary that the scripture be fulfilled, that the Holy Spirit, through the mouth of David, foretold about Judas, who became a guide to those who arrested Jesus. For he was one of our number and shared in this ministry. Now this man acquired a field with his unrighteous wages. He fell head first, his body burst open, and his intestines spilled out. This became known to all the residents of Jerusalem, so that in their own language that field is called Hakeldama, that is, field of blood. For it is written in the book of Psalms,'" and this is actually, Peter's actually pulling two different places from the book of Psalms and marrying them together for this little segment where he's quoting the book of Psalms. "Let his dwelling become desolate, let no one live in it, and let someone else take his position. Therefore, from among the men who have accompanied us during the whole time the Lord Jesus went in and out among us, beginning from the baptism of John until the day he was taken up from us, from among these it is necessary that one become a witness with us of his resurrection." So they proposed two: Joseph, called Barsabbas, and who was also known as Justus, and Matthias. When they prayed, "You, Lord, know everyone's hearts. Show which of these two you have chosen to take the place in this apostolic ministry that Judas left to go where he belongs." Then they cast lots for them, and the lot fell to Matthias, and he was added to the 11 apostles. He became the 12th apostle, taking Judas's place. So, in this hanging thoughts, the event that we're looking at with Judas, we turn to Matthew, flipping back and forth in my Bible, Matthew 26, and we're gonna read a few different excerpts from Matthew 26 just to get an idea of what's going on with Judas here. We're starting in verse 14. "Then one of the 12, the man called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, 'What are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you?'" Him being, Jesus, because, yeah. "So they weighed out 30 pieces of silver for him. And from that time, he started looking for a good opportunity to betray him." And then we're going to jump over to chapter 27, verse 5.
4, 3,
3.
2.
We're starting 3.
No, 3.
3. "Then Judas, his betrayer, seeing that Jesus had been condemned, was full of remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders. 'I have sinned by betraying innocent blood,' he said. 'What's that to us?' they said. 'See to it yourself.' So he threw the silver into the temple and departed. Then he went and hanged himself." Hanged himself. Okay. And then verses 7 through 8, they, the chief priests, we don't have to skip verse 6. We can read that one too. "The chief priests took the silver and said, 'It is not permitted to put it into the temple treasury, since it is blood money.' They conferred together and bought the potter's field with it as a burial place for foreigners. Therefore, that field has been called Blood Field to this day. Okay. So this is actually one of those things where people go, well, see, there's an inconsistency there. See, Matthew says hanged, and in Acts it says his body burst open and his intestines spilled out. Well, this idea of hanged that they're talking about in Matthew isn't the same kind of hang like lynching that in our modern mind we think of hanging someone from a tree with a rope. That's not what Judas did to himself. Hanging yourself then in this context is to take a sword that has a handle guard, and you put the butt of the sword onto the ground and you fall forward onto it, and then your midsection is caught on that handle guard and you're literally hanging there over top of the ground, hanging over the sword. And so this is this idea of hanging that Judas did to himself. He actually threw himself onto his own sword and then hung there on the handle guard until his body burst open and his intestines spilled out.
Mm-hmm.
And the field was bought with the 30 pieces of silver. The 30 pieces of silver that originated from the same priests that refused to take it back because now it's blood money
That they spent.
that they created by hiring an assassin of sorts. Yeah.
Gotta love people who dance
That's
that line.
that's some serious like swerving right there. Like, how do we make ourselves look good here? Oh, I know. We'll use this money and we'll buy the field where he just went and killed himself. And we'll buy it in his name because it's his blood money. And then we'll make it a place to bury foreigners and the poor.
Because then we didn't do anything wrong.
Classy. Yeah, because then we did it right. We didn't put that money back into the coffers. We did the right thing. Right. So this idea of hanging, it's just those kind of details, when you go into conversations and you're talking to people and they bring up things like, there's this contradiction between Matthew and Acts. You can, well, actually, if you did a modicum of research, you would find that you're wrong. And that those aren't, that's not a contradiction. That's actually the same thing in the cultural context.
Yeah.
Right? We always talk about, when you're studying the Bible, you want to look at what the cultural context is. Because if you take it and you take that scripture according to your cultural context, then you've taken it out of context.
Yeah,
It's
and
no longer in context.
and there are times where, with the context of the Bible, you can't even just trust. Oh well, Strong's Concordance says this. This says this. That means that. Which the diction does. The connotations do not. And that's
Right.
where those connotations that come from culture and colloquialisms and all that, we deal with it every day. We have so many words that we use incorrectly away from their diction, or their diction has changed because of that. So, I mean, yeah. But those are definitely some, and you know, there's a lot that has been stated and done around his death. A lot of things said and a lot of things thought through that, and it's very interesting sometimes, some of those beliefs that arose from it.
Okay. And you bring up the strong concordance thing because the strong concordance literally says that word means to strangle oneself.
Yeah, to choke, to strangle.
But culturally, that's not
Right.
what they were referring to when they said hanged himself.
You know, and it's one of those where it's an understanding of, you know, the culture more than understanding of the language.
Right.
There's, you
Because
know,
we use words that mean other things all the time. And if you didn't know our culture,
hmm
you'd be confused.
I mean, we're amazing at it in Christianity as well. You know, we
Mm,
use words that mean something to us,
yeah.
mean something completely different to other people.
Right.
Um, and that's always something we have to think about and look at when we're studying and when we're, you know, just living. Because oftentimes, how you feel a word means is not how someone else views it, and regular words can become offensive easily due to those
Well,
types
even
of
not even
things.
just offensive, but even simple words like we had this conversation before about what's the difference between the soul and the spirit.
Yeah,
And honestly, it depends on who you ask.
yeah,
Because people use those words interchangeably
yep,
to literally mean two different things, and they just use them
yep.
interchangeably. Also biweekly and bi-monthly.
Oh, don't get me started on that one.
Biweekly not only means every other week, but it also means twice a week.
Are we talking about accounting? Are we talking about meetings? Are we talking about payroll? Are we talking about... Because for
Yeah.
all of those situations, it could mean something different. Or the
Mm-hmm.
exact thing you think of.
Biannually. Okay, is that twice a year or is that once every 2 years? Depends on context. Yeah.
I hate that one. That one irritates me.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Bi-weekly,
All right, well,
especially.
yeah, biweekly is one of those that's
We need to
like,
meet
can
on
you
this
just say every
bi-weekly.
other week when you mean every other week?
We need to meet on this bi-weekly. Am I setting up a
Biweekly.
Tuesday, Thursday? Or am I setting up a Wednesday, Wednesday?
Hmm.
That one always gets me. And you got to
So
clarify immediately.
one of the things that I had decided at one point to start doing instead of saying biweekly, when I meant every other week, I would start saying fortnightly. Because a fortnight means 2 weeks.
I thought a fortnight was technically 20 days.
Isn't it just I thought it was 2 weeks. How long is a fortnight?
Oh, it's a period of 2 weeks.
Which is interesting. What? That's in okay.
Actually, it
There
can be
are
14 or 15 days.
there are 336 hours in a fortnight. Why did you give it to me in that? And there are 26.08929 fortnights in a year. Google or no, DuckDuckGo is trying to prank me or something. Just tell me 336 hours or 26.08929 times in a year.
Originally, it meant 14 nights. Night.
Fortnight. Yeah.
14 nights.
So we should meet fortnightly
So,
about this.
but is
And
that 14 nights, which could be 15 days? That's where the question of 14
you meet
nights.
on one day, and then you have 14 nights between those, and then you meet again.
Then that's the 15th day.
That's the 15th day.
So it's not 14 days.
Well, it's we'll meet it. Okay, whatever.
So if we meet on Monday and then we meet the next fortnight, the next time we meet is a Tuesday.
Right, and then the next time it'll be a Wednesday, and the next time it'll be a Thursday, and the next time it'll be a Friday, and it'll
And
be
then
great.
once it's a Friday, then we can't have the business meeting until Monday, which means it's no longer a fortnight and you've ruined it completely.
Mm-hmm. ruin it for people like you, sure.
I don't like that one either.
For
No.
normal people that are, normal, that's not a problem.
No,
It's
for
just,
normal
okay,
people,
yeah,
they're
we'll
not
start
saying
over on
Fortnite.
Monday.
I love you, but normal people aren't saying Fortnite. Unless
No,
they're
they're
doing a
using
dumb
these
dance.
ambiguous things that nobody knows what they mean, and they're having to clarify.
I love our arguments.
Okay. I'm done with my section, which I thought would take longer, but that's okay. You have the floor for the next 20 minutes.
I'm not gonna take it. I don't accept it.
It's time. We're gonna talk about casting lots.
So, there's the conversation. We touched on it several weeks ago. Just casting lots. What is it? What does it mean? And where's the line? There are people that cast lots very, very often in life. There are some people who cast lots so often in life, they keep lots on their desk to be cast at any moment. So that way they don't have to search for them to cast them. And go so far as to cast ones that look like they're made of bone when they're not. Which is possibly getting real close to that line of what you're casting.
Well, reading bones and reading tea leaves is not casting lots.
No.
You've gone past.
Yes, you've gone past casting lots, and you've entered something else.
Asking for an answer and into prognostication.
Yeah. Flip of a coin, yes, that as well is a form. It was normally done with dice or dice type things. They weren't the dice that we use commonly normally. They were more like the dice that are used in episode 1 of Star Wars. The ones that only certain sides are colored. The colored die. They weren't numbers all the time. They were, it depended. It depended on the situations. It depended on...
Well, in Gideon's time, they cast lots with fleece. They would go out first thing in the morning after the morning dew had fallen on the, where it was on the ground, and they would throw out fleece on the ground, and whichever fleece came up dry, that was the right answer.
Yeah. We've evolved to polyhedrons, to polyhedral dice made of polyurethane, typically.
In Aaron's day, they drew Uman and Thuman from a bag, which is basically just you draw a rock, and if it's a white rock, the answer is yes. If you draw a black rock, the answer is no.
Yeah. And some dice were painted, some are not numeric. Some dice are, and you would change the probability of things by tossing a 6-sided die that was usually hand carved, which means the sides were not accurately mathematically correct, and then one side was painted and not all of them had. No, it all depended on how it was done. But the idea of casting lots is asking God to help you make the decision, or asking God to make the decision through the lots.
But not only Christians cast lots. I mean,
no,
soldiers cast lots for who would get what pieces of Jesus' clothing.
And those ones were probably more an actual dice game.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons why I've heard preached why casting lots is bad, because obviously it's bad because the Romans did it, and you're
and then the apostles literally do it to choose who to replace
weeks later. But okay, yeah, sure. But I mean, it's part of also your intention. Are you trying?
Well, everything boils down to intention.
Everything. Are you trying? One of the things that you see with people is, evens will do this, odds will do that, and when it rolls and you don't get what you want, you go, well, best out of 2 out of 3. And it's like,
No, see, now you're tempting fate.
not, and let's be honest, I've done it, and there's been times. One time I did it, and the next roll was 3 1s, and it's one of those where it's like, I, oh, oh, like, and granted, if you don't do things like that often, you're like, so. In games, in dice things, ones are your worst typical roll, and so 3 1 statistically, it's a decently hard roll, because you have to take the statistical likelihood of each of the dice rolling and the numbers and numerically, three of any, let's be honest, three of any single number is a lot harder to roll than a combination number. And so it's one of those where you're like, oh no, blah. And yeah, people who play Yahtzee know how hard it is to get, one roll and picking up, all six or three or four. And you're just like, oh, sorry. I'll go to bed. You're right. But we sometimes do it for simple things like, which video game do we really want to play tonight? If we can't decide, we don't care, and we're like, oh, what do you want to do? Do you want to hang out? You want to watch TV? Do you want to play game? Do you want to stare at each other and not actually like each other? What do you want to do tonight? Sometimes you can't decide, and in those times,
Matching shirts and popcorn and eat popcorn and tell stories.
we're grown men. We don't wear matching shirts.
Not after you see that I'm wearing the same shirt as you are now.
Right. That's why I changed shirts. So for those out there that are like, what is he talking about? I wore my Friends of Garrick, and he wore his Friend of Garrick shirt tonight. Both of us.
And then we connected on camera and went, oh, look at that! The lot fell to the same shirt, and he went,
I didn't notice. I didn't notice. You were the one who was like, ooh, look, we're wearing the same shirt. And I'm like, not with that attitude, we ain't. No. No, we can accidentally wear the same shirt, but once you start making a thing out of it, it ain't happening. I'm going to go change shirts. And so I did. I didn't even just change shirts. I changed genres. Like, but this was the closest shirt between me and the bedroom closet, actually. I didn't even get all the way to the closet. This was just, I actually took this out of my office like an hour ago. So it was like,
so you were talking about random number generators.
Yeah. So there was a question that I posed to a friend of mine around casting lots, because we were doing a study on when casting lots came up. I don't even remember, but casting lots came up in a biblical study we were doing in our family Bible study, and so I was talking to my cousin's husband, because he's a gamer, and I was like, it makes you wonder if it was the fact that the verse that God decides all roles, God decides fate and stuff like that.
What verse is this?
We talked about it last time. I don't remember. Did you pull it up because you knew we were going to talk about it?
No.
Proverbs 16:33.
That's what I was about to say. A lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord.
So it's and the meaning of that is basically, we cast lots. Every time you cast lots in your lap, you cast lots in the street, you cast lots. But
even buying a lottery ticket and scratching it off is casting a lot.
Yeah. And so we had this discussion of, and you said something that almost borderline offended me when you said it around this. Which is, I was like, well, random number generators, there's this joke in the community, in all gaming communities, of you need to pray to RNGesus. And that's spelled RNGEESUS. And it's because RNG is a random number generator, and that is how video games decide loot rolls, is random number generators. And that's how dice kind of work, is a random number generator. A computer form of random number generation is its version of throwing a die. The problem with RNG is there is no such thing as random number generation. Because when you start dealing with technology, there is not as much atmospheric things that can affect. There's not wind, there's not surface tension, it's just go pick a number between 1 and whatever. And the computer goes and does it. Anyone who's used the random feature on their smart device or their old CD player knows it's not truly random. There is a pattern. Granted, there's a pattern to dice rolls if you look at it enough. But the numbers are just smaller. So it's interesting to look at random number generation. Is random number generation the same as a lot? And if that's the case, every time you get upset because you don't get loot, is that something that we shouldn't get any form of upset because God controls when and when not you're going to get loot? It's a very interesting thought process because it's not the same, but it's one of those things for a gamer you're like, is it? and so you get into it. And then you said something that offended me to a small degree, which was when we were arguing about this on whether it was or wasn't. You said, my relationship with God has nothing to do with a random number generator. The outcome of a random number generator. And I'm like, that's my point. It's not your relationship. It's the random number generator. Is it or is it not a lot? And that's, it's an interesting thought process of, is it? And
I also said the random number generators are created for you to overcome by rolling again to try to get that piece that you're looking for. Do the challenge again. Do the challenge again. Do the challenge again. That's what RNG is all about, is re-rolling until you get that piece of armor, you get that drop.
Not necessarily.
You're trying to get.
I think that depends on the gameplay and if they're actually using a random number generator. Because a lot of times we argue that random number generators are, we blame RNG for things in video games that have nothing to do with RNG. If the programmer programs one thing to be available 1% of the time and one thing to be available 48% of the time, that's not a random number generator's fault, except for the fact that it is. Because the random number generator is choosing a number between 1 and 100. So, whereas they're deciding the statistical probability of you getting the item, the number that it chooses is still part of an RNG.
Right, because the RNG will choose a number between 1 and 100, but if they say this drop has a 48% chance, it just changes the value of how often each number between 1 and 100 is chosen.
Right. No, it would be what you would do, depending on
some of those numbers you'd get it, and some of those numbers you wouldn't.
Right. You assign to each number what the loot is, or a percentage chance, and then it depends on the percentage. Really depends on how the game is coded, but it's interesting to think about a thought experiment like this, because this is purely a thought experiment, which of course has nothing to do with salvation. But it's an interesting thought experiment of what is random when you get to a point of saying something like God chooses every lot. So God chooses how every roll is done. So because of that, what does that truly mean for people who are like, oh, it's just a coincidence? Because it's like...
let's read it again. Proverbs 16:33. The lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. So flipping a coin... The outcome of that decision, that's from the Lord. Now, if you flip a coin and it goes heads, and then you go, okay, best two out of three, and you flip a coin again, and then it says tails, I'm pretty sure God just doesn't care about your question. God's like, it doesn't matter. You just asked me whether you should drink Coke or Sprite, for all I care.
Yeah, and that's not saying that who said that?
Proverbs 16 was probably written by
Proverbs.
David.
Yeah, let's look.
Yeah, Roxanne on Facebook asks, okay, but who said that? And she's not wrong. We talk about that.
Yeah, it's a valid
You
question.
know, there's things in the book of Job that you're like, yeah, that's not actual truth. That's his friend's error.
16.
16 was King Solomon. So only the wisest man who's ever lived.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Solomon until from 10:1 to 22 is straight up Proverbs of Solomon.
Not only was Solomon the wisest man that ever lived, but when Solomon became king, he gave away all of his father's wealth because, let's be honest, David stole everything he had. Gave it all back to who David stole it from. And then within, I think it was a decade, he had amassed 10 times the amount of wealth that David had. Because he was wise, he had business acumen, he understood how the world worked. And she follows up and asks, and was he correct when he said it? So let's ask, let's look at some commentaries and see what they say.
S says to go to 16:30. Yeah. 16:1. The reflections of the heart belong to mankind, but the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. 19:21. I'm looking at everywhere that this Bible points to. Being a poor person who does with integrity. Better is a poor person who does with integrity than someone who has deceitful lips. That's interesting that it would point there, because that could definitely argue of, don't lie about what dice say. Don't lie about your roll, you D&D players. Cheaters.
In 1 Samuel chapter 14, they cast lots with the Urim and Thummim to determine who was guilty in an event that had just happened, and we as the reader have insight on who's actually guilty, but they don't know. And the Urim and Thummim accurately expose Jonathan, Saul's son, as the person who was the wrongdoer.
As someone who doesn't believe in chance, I would definitely agree that in my study and everything I've learned and studied and believe, there is no chance. And so, yeah, I believe that God does control lots.
The question is, how? For me. Because God sets up systems. God doesn't necessarily micromanage the lots. He sets up systems and hands off, he delegates. So that's where, to me, luck comes in. Luck being an actual entity, an actual being, a spiritual being that moves and ebbs and flows and interacts with our lives, and has very much to do with when lots are cast and dice are thrown and things like that. Roxanne asks, and how does using the Lord's name in vain correlate to throwing lots? So using the name's Lord in vain, using the Lord's name in vain is actually a reference to saying God told me to do this, or God did that when it was actually just you and it wasn't God, or God didn't do it and it was just something that happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's don't falsely say God is responsible for something when God had nothing to do with it. When is it random and when is it inspired? Well, according to Proverbs, I know you questioned, was he correct when he said it, but according to that verse, it's
Yes.
always inspired. Casting lots is always inspired, and it's always random. Random to our view.
And I think that's the key
Um,
there is the providence of God. The family Bible study and other things I've been doing recently has led me to Esther, um, a bunch. And it's interesting for a book that God's name is not used once. His handprint is everywhere. You know, um,
providence.
huh?
That's what the word
Yeah, yeah.
providence
That's what the
means.
word. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that whole thing of a butterfly flaps its wings over here and it can cause a tsunami. It doesn't always, but it can because of cause and effect. And so there are times where I think that that's the big thing of there is no random in my opinion. It appears random to our human forms in going through linear time. But that's my personal belief.
The Israelites cast lots to see what tribe would get what plots of land um, under Joshua when they
Mm-hmm.
got to the promised land. In the book of Jonah, they cast lots to find out who it was in the ship that was causing the wrath of God to bring the storm upon the ship. And it fell upon Jonah, and then Jonah was like, "You caught me. But don't fear not. I will selflessly cast myself into the sea and die." This dude was ready to cast himself in the sea and die rather than go to Nineveh.
Mm-hmm. He was a very stubborn man.
I'd rather die.
Then bring
And God was like,
salvation to people
then bring salvation
people
to
I
those
don't
fish
like.
worshippers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not only that, but then God has him swallowed by a big fish and
Yeah.
spit up on the beach by a big fish where all the people can see it and go, "Hey, you know that fish god we worship? Well, his son's here. And he says he has a message from the Lord." Oh, let's listen. Because God has a sense of humor.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
All right. It's 7:33, so we're a little over our normal time. This podcast comes out every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, wherever you get your podcasts. If you listen to this and you like it, could you please like it? Actually officially like it and share it and follow us. Helps new people find the podcast and therefore spread faith, hope, and love to more of the modern church. We do record this podcast live on Sunday nights at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Mm-hmm.
And this next episode we're going to record will be a little different. We won't record it live, but we will be actively live in the chat when it is actually going out. And that is because we will actually be in the same place next weekend when we record it instead of me being in Texas and Pastor Nooms being in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
So after next week, if you would join us at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, or rather Central Daylight. I guess it's Daylight Savings Time, DST. Central DST. Then
I really hope it
that's gonna
passes
be
the
weird.
House.
But it'll always be Central DST.
No, it would just be
Be a
Central
mouthful.
at that time.
Hmm.
We would no longer have to say Central DST for the times that we are in Daylight Savings Time. It would just be Central again.
Yeah. Okay. They could have chosen the fall time,
That's the
which
only
was the
thing that
original time.
that's the thing that weirds me out is why they didn't go that route,
Right.
because that is messing with Arizona.
Right.
Arizona is now,
Anyway.
yeah, anyway. I was talking to Arizona,
I
some
mean,
people from Arizona about it, and they were not happy.
well, yeah, your wife's from Arizona,
No, no,
so
this was actually
yeah.
business.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The clients we just
Okay.
launched recently was we moved to Arizona. That was one of the big things we did to a new EMR, so at my job.
Gotcha.
So
All right, so that invitation is out there. If you would like to join us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch on some Sunday nights, you can be a part of the chat and see us record it live. Then we would love for you to come and join us. You can find out which Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube channels those are by going to our website, ekk.house. I hope you guys have a great week, and I love you very much.
be safe out there, y'all.
And until next time.
And now, for our people who are still here because of live stuff, we have to sing a little
Happy
jig.
birthday to
No,
Groggy.
no,
Oh, that was
no,
last week.
no, that was last week.
Sorry, that was last week. Yeah,
Oh,
that was last week.
boy. You gonna push my buttons
Yeah.
already? We ain't even entering our post meeting yet, and you're already pushing my buttons.
30-second
buffer.
30-second
30-second buffer. 30-second buffer.
Has it been 30 seconds yet?
No,
That's not how time works.
works.
30-second
Buffer.
buffer.
30-second buffer. 30-second buffer. Goodbye.
All right, you guys have a great week.
We love you.
Go. Name
Peace
out loud.
out.